I can still remember when this thing came out in 2013. I was relatively new to photography at the time, and my first camera was the Canon 40D. So I was used to big SLRs, using flash. That was my thing. I really enjoyed trying to learn that. And then around 2013, Fuji released the X100s, which was the second iteration of the X100 series. Now the main selling points at the time were that it was mirrorless. This was really kind of the start of the mirrorless revolution. I honestly didn't really know what that meant because I wasn't that knowledgeable about photography. But I know they were selling it as the affordable version of Leica cameras, and I had heard about Leicas and I knew kind of what they were, and so the promise seemed to be real. And at the time, if you recall, some of the early converters were Zach Arias, where are you dude, and David Hobby, the strobist. And so those guys were really out there talking about the features and benefits of this camera, so I thought, what the hell, I'll go get one. Being new to photography and never really having owned a retro camera, this thing just looked good to me. And so when I got it and I started carrying it around the streets, it was true what people were saying is that you can kind of use it in stealth mode because at the time this was pretty small compared to SLR cameras, and it really was nice carrying this thing around. For reference, I had been using the Canon 40D. Look at that beast. This thing shit the bed during a wedding, so I could never sell it off. I still got it. It sits in my closet. It's got this sentimental value that I can't seem to get rid of. So I remember getting this camera, and you could adjust the aperture and the shutter speed manually, and the buttons seemed so chic and retro. But the thing that really caught my attention was how satisfying that Fujinon aspherical lens was. It just had this look, and if you've shot 35mm, it just has this look. And so, I got this thing and I was using it for a while. I used it pretty regular for about 3, 4, 5 years, and then it just sort of went into the closet because I was doing a lot of dog portrait photography, a lot of that type of thing, and I just sort of forgot about the Fuji. So a couple weeks back, I had to make a trip to Washington, D.C., and I thought, you know what? I'm damn sick of carrying all this camera gear. I just want to take something small. I know I'm gonna go out to the National Mall at some point, and I want a little camera that I can fit in my backpack and carry around. And so what I ended up doing was taking the Fuji and the little handle from my DJI Ronin, and that was my tripod. That just screws right into the bottom, and I was good to go. Now, before I went to Washington, I wanted to give this thing a trial run because it had been a while since I used it. So we went up to Placerville, California, started messing around with it as we're walking around the streets, and it became clear to me why I liked this thing in the first place. The files are so satisfying, and I had forgotten how much I like converting files from this camera into black and white. I guess it's that 35mm perspective, but it's just satisfying to the eye. And the other thing I had forgotten is how good a depth of field you can get using this camera. You can go down to 2.0. I usually shoot it around 2.8 when I want to get a good depth of field. And when you look at the shot of these Christmas bulbs and these little baubles and textures, man, you just get crazy depth of field. Having gotten more accustomed to it, I went ahead and took it out to Washington, D.C. with me. While there, I knew I wanted to get the obvious things, right? The Washington Monument, the Lincoln Memorial, and that was kind of it, and maybe some reflections off the water. So I set about walking. Now, while it was chilly here, there, it was still warm, probably in the high 50s, 60s, and humid. So I'm sweating my ass off as I walk the 2 miles out to the National Mall, thanking God I have this tiny little camera to use. Because of work circumstances, I could only shoot at night, so I'm really thankful I brought that little tripod. But the shots I got, in the nighttime or in the setting sun were really good. Now I had to set it on the ground and dial it in, and I think some of these were 11-second shots, 10-second shots or more. In fact, here's some actual footage from me shooting at the National Mall. Just kidding, that's a recreation. But the poor tourists behind me, that's probably what they saw. So I would just set this thing on the ground, kind of just hold it in place, let it go for 10 seconds. I'm really satisfied with the shots I got. And I have to say, I'm still thrilled with the files I get from this Fuji that's from 2013. I'm not looking to print out a 4x4 foot print. If anything, maybe I'll have an 11x14, something like that. But in terms of usability and just really sort of having to frame the shot and having the tactile feel of the buttons and maneuvering to really get the shot that you want, I gotta say, this thing is still vital to me. I'm gonna be taking it out more. I thought I might want to get the X100V, I think that's the newest one. But really, what's the point? I mean, this thing is still taking great photos. I'm mostly gonna look at them digitally on a computer screen anyway. But man, this thing still performs, super happy with it. I'll be taking this out more. If you don't have the Fuji X100s or are looking at the Fujis in general for just a street type of photography, I'll tell you what, it's very satisfying to use. I would definitely take a look at that. This thing still works for me. Till next time, cheers.